Welcome to WebConnect number 3, Essay Excellence. I'm Aryan Ahuja, the founder of UnivConnect. Today on our WebConnect, we've got Dr. Kimberly Dixit, the CEO and co-founder of the Red Pen. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Kimberly.
Thank you for having me.
Right. And today we've also got Kevin D'Souza, our co-founder at UnivConnect.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Dr. Kimberly Dixit actually got a PhD from Duke University and has also lectured at Duke University and Stanford University. She was born and raised in California, but has lived in Mumbai for the past 12 years. As you know, she's the CEO and co-founder of one of the biggest consultation companies in Mumbai, the Red Pen. Red Pen's a boutique consultation firm. It's been open for more than 9 years with 7 global locations, 1,000 plus admits into top universities. In fact, Dr. Kim has a book of her own on how to ace admissions. I'd recommend you to check it out at www.redpen.in. So today, basically the webinar or WebConnect, as we might say, is going to help you answer those key questions about the SOP, that common app. So don't worry, UnivConnect and the Red Pen are here for you today. So should we begin the questions?
Sure, I'm ready.
Yes, definitely. I think. Okay, so Dr. Kim, it's great to have Dr. Kim here, and she has interacted with so many essays, and she's seen it all when it comes to the Common App essay and the UK SOP. So just to get like a bird's eye view on the US essay, the Common App essay, what's the intention of this essay, and like what are the admissions officers kind of like looking at when they read this essay?
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I think that's a really good question and a great place to start, because I think that a lot of students get very stressed out about this essay, and they think the whole application is sort of hinges on whether essay is considered good or bad. And there's a couple of things I want to say. One is there's no objectively good or bad Common App essay, and we've seen this sometimes when we go to conferences or professional development events, admissions officers from top colleges are there, and we'll do an exercise where they both, like 2 or 3 colleges will look at the same application, including the same essays. And one admissions officer will say, I love this essay, I love this student, everything they're saying really speaks to our university, and we would admit them. Whereas the next college, another highly selective university, will say, this student isn't really what we're looking for. And the way they wrote about, the way they wrote about community service made it seem like they're very arrogant or something. They may have picked that up, right? So everyone has a different interpretation of the essay. So there's no right or wrong. So that's where I want to begin. But the intention, as we know from the admissions officers, is that this essay is really there for them to get to know you. They want to know you as a person. So they have a lot of paperwork, a lot of blanks filled into a form that tell them a lot of things about you. But that is very two-dimensional, right? They want to see the third dimension. They want to see if you have been a national level squash player, why? What motivated you to do that? Or if I might have 2 national level squash player applications I'm looking at, and they may be playing squash or pursuing sports for very different reasons, right? One is doing it because his father was a squash champion, and another one may do it because he had access to nothing else, but there was a squash NGO that came to his village or something. I mean, I don't know. They're totally different reasons for doing exactly the same thing. So those kinds of stories need to come out in the Common App essay. And I think the thing that I hope you can hear me. It's saying my internet connection is unstable. But anyway, the main thing that that I would like, that the main intention of the essay is to get to know the student. So, I could tell you a lot of ways, mistakes that students make around that, but the intention of the essay and why it's in the application is so that colleges can see who you are. Like I said, connect the dots to the activities you've done, and any kind of awards you've received, or anything that's happened in your life that they can see on the form or on your resume or even in your recommendation letters, anything they can see there that, connecting the dots between that and you as a person. So it's really important to make sure that you as a person are coming out on the page very strongly.
Got it. So I understand it's like a kind of a window into the personality of the student.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, very much.
That's great to hear. All right. So on that note, like, are there kind of things, as you said, it's very objective, and different admissions advisors might look at it in a different way. But are there any like common topics that you should avoid when talking about your essays?
So it's interesting you ask that question, because I really don't like to say that, you should never write about something or you should always write about something, because again, it's a very subjective process and there's no right and wrong. However, I think we do want to, suppose you want to write an essay about, sports and how being the captain of the football team or something has been the most important thing to you. And that's a very common topic, because not necessarily football, but sports in general, or even music, how it's been something that's really transformed your life or something like that. So that's fine. I wouldn't say never write about football or never write about music, but do acknowledge that these are common experiences for people in the same age group. So it's not that you can't talk about those common experiences, but it's really important to differentiate yourself from other people who might have the same experience. So for example, someone once said this to me, if the entire, senior class of essays was just, sort of thrown from the roof of the school and you went around and picked them all up and read them, you should know exactly whose essay you're reading. It should not be that, you could replace the head boy for the head girl in the essay, right? They should be two different people with two different stories. Same thing with, with the soccer team. Everybody is on the field for a different reason. Everybody's getting something different out of it. And so that's important to make sure and distinguish yourself. So don't write about common topics in a common way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And when I say common topics, what we usually hear are, sports, divorce, death. Like my grandfather died and I was very sad. Of course you were, but what else do you have to tell us about yourself, right? So sports, divorce, death, and gosh, I feel like I'm forgetting one really obvious one. But in general, those are topics that I would add music, because I feel like music and dance, I see a lot of, I was shy or I didn't know myself, and then music or dance really helped me express myself. So I see that narrative a lot. So just to give you an example, I think that it's very important to take an essay like that. Let's say football, or let's not say football. Let's say dance, right? And put it in the context of something that is more, that is about more than that. And that could be something like self-confidence. It could also be something like, again, you could combine the topics of academic struggle in dance, or dance and moving cities, or whatever. You need to kind of mix it up and put something more into that common topic than maybe somebody else would. And the other thing I want to say is that if you are choosing one of these very, very common topics, it's also important that it not be the first sentence, because admissions officers are they're literally reading thousands of these essays, right? So you get to number 999 and you're like, oh, another soccer essay, or oh, another essay about learning how to swim or whatever. So you kind of want to keep them guessing for a few minutes and then hook them in with something, and then you can go ahead and talk about soccer or music or whatever. But if you've got something interesting to say right at the beginning, it kind of gets them interested, and then by the time they've realized it's one of those common topics, they're still interested in you. So that would be my advice around common topics.
So just a follow-up small question on that. It's not on the slides, but this one that I had. So does the flow of the essay really determine how much attention the person reading the essay is going to give to it?
I wouldn't say that. I think they give full attention to all the essays. Of course, it's challenging, and it's a very manual process. But I think what it does is it sets their tone. It sets the tone of their reception from the beginning. So they'll read the whole thing, but if right at the beginning they're like, oh, I don't like what this story is going to be about, then they might just kind of read the whole thing a little more critically. Whereas if it's something that kind of gives them a nice happy feeling right at the beginning, then they're more open to whatever it says. So I think it's more about that. And I think, we do hear from a lot of admissions officers that, and I don't know what students will do with this information, but they do tell us that, and this is from all range of colleges, that they read thousands of these essays, and actually they're like, every year I would say there are 5 or 10 that I think are amazing, and the rest are not that good. The rest are okay. They're okay. They're fine.
So the beginning could really differentiate you.
Yes, it could. I mean, the whole essay could really differentiate you, but definitely if you're choosing one of those topics that's very common, yeah.
Got it.
So what are your top 3, pet peeves when it comes to a Common App essay? As you just stated, in fact, I think, music, dance, football, sorry, sports, as I may say. And yeah, so.
So I don't think any of those topics are my peeves. Those wouldn't be my pet peeves. There are lots of things. I actually haven't, I should have given this question more thought before I started, but one of them, and I'm just mentioning this because it's one that is happening to me recently, a lot recently, is it really bothers me when a student is fixated on writing their essay about a particular topic or activity. It's like, oh, I won a robotics Olympiad. So that has to be what my Common App essay is about. And it's like, but it doesn't. Actually, your Common App essay can be about
anything.
Art museum you visited. It can be about anything. The Common App essay, the topic of it can be anything. The content of it and what someone takes away has to be you. Who are you? What is your story? And that can be told in many, many ways. So I think having that very rigid mindset around, I've excelled in this, so this is what my topic has to be, I think that is not going to really it's very hard to see beyond that, right? So you need to start with, who am I? What do I want people to know about me from this essay? And then say, okay, now, if that's the case, if I want them to know that I'm hardworking, compassionate, and open-minded, those are 3 characteristics, what story in my life really demonstrates that the best? Then start. So that's peeve number 1. And I think my other pet peeve, honestly, is just lack of proofreading when students, and whether it's when they send it to me, which of course would annoy me, but when they send it, in the application itself, it's like the proofreading is the easiest part of your application, of your essay. So why wouldn't you just do it, right? I mean, so I think people are either in such a rush, or they just don't think it's important, or they depend so much on their spell check that they don't proofread it. And then there's some kind of silly mistake that didn't have to happen. So that's probably pet peeve number 2. And my third pet peeve, I think, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the third pet peeve would be these, and I think you have a question on this later, are these like, as we call them, $20 words, where you're just like, I've never heard that word ever, except in this Common App essay. Like, you don't want to send the admissions officer to the dictionary to figure out what you're trying to say.
Right.
So, I mean, that's the other thing, is just be very, very simple and straightforward, because if you think about it and someone has a minute to read your essay, do you want to really confuse them? The best thing is just to be very clear. They will appreciate that the most. Clear, entertaining, and light, and just honest.
Right. So basically we cannot, pursue and be Mr. Tharoor in our essays.
The what rule? You can't pursue what?
We can't be Mr. Shashi Tharoor in our essays.
No. Please avoid that. Save that for your career.
I guess it has to sound like a student, I mean,
right.
Coming from a student. That's
true.
Yeah. It's a very important point.
Okay.
So what are the key elements which you you were scanning through an essay and that really caught your eye? And what really makes that essay really good? Could it be like in the middle, the introduction? What would it be?
So I think the key elements that make the best essays I've read are when the student has the ability to put 2 different experiences or ideas into relation. So I'm going to mention this example. I use it all the time. So if any of you have ever heard me before, you've probably heard this example. But I had a student who he wrote about going to, so he wanted to write about, overcoming obstacles and sort of building self-esteem, which all teenagers have this struggle, right? So it was a pretty common topic. But what he did was he went on an exchange program, I think, to Germany. And he writes about, so he introduces the whole essay where he has his camera, and there's a tall, like a cathedral or something with a spire, and he can't fit that spire into his camera lens. And he keeps trying and he keeps moving, but he can't get the whole thing to work. So he introduces his story about, frustrated with not being able to fit this thing into his lens. And then he goes and kind of like goes into a flashback and talks about his experience growing up and kind of not fitting in and being in different environments and not fitting in. And then you go back at the end to this, him trying to get the photograph done. And he eventually lays down in the middle of this square in Europe somewhere. And he lies on his back and he gets a full picture of the cathedral. And then he talks about how all he had to do was change his perspective to make things fit. And so it was like just such a nice essay about something very simple, but he had kind of bookended it with this other experience that helped us. It was so creative, right? So I just feel like, what I think the best essays have are that creative element, that element of like, I'm not telling you a very linear narrative, like I was, I loved football. I became the captain of the football team. We were a losing team. We became a winning team, and I built my confidence. Like that's a very linear narrative, right?
Right.
So this was kind of back and forth and different things. So it was just very, very nice to see. It just shows that someone is creative, honestly. And I think that is something that an admissions officer would be refreshing, right? Like, oh. And if you've ever seen sort of the essays that go around the internet, like the Costco essay and the pizza essay and all of those, really, that's what they're doing. That girl was using Costco to tell, the different sort of aisles and items at Costco to tell her story and talk about herself, because it's interesting to do it that way rather than just a straightforward story. It's hard. It's very hard. I don't see a lot of students who succeed, but those are my favorite essays. I think that if you can display some creativity.
Right. So storytelling and creativity could be an integral part of you cracking that essay.
Yes, yes. And also, I mean, the really hard part about that example and all of them is that it cannot come across as if you're trying too hard, right? If you're really forcing that whole metaphor of the cathedral in your life is like, oh, yeah, that sounds a bit. So there's a skill to it as well.
Definitely.
Right.
So there's like a whole season where kids write their Common App essay, and there's like a lot of time for them to get ready to write that essay, do some soul searching, kind of like do research on like how to write their essay. So is there any like framework that kids need to like go through while they prepare for their essay, or is it just like as it comes?
So that's a good question. And I was just reading yesterday, I mean, just so that everybody knows, I'm also always reading about, the best practices to get students to support students to write the best essays, because different things work at different times, right? And different things resonate with me at different times. So I was just reading something yesterday about the fact, what do you do when a student sends you their first draft and it's really boring? What do you do? And it happens a lot because, it's just the first draft. And the thing was, the temptation for counselors and for people who are helping students write essays is to give them an exercise. Like, okay, write down 40 things that describe you, or write down 20 things you've done in your life, or write down 10 things, like these exercises and lots of lists and but I think that can be a huge distraction. Sometimes I feel like those things can be a distraction. They can be procrastination. So if that works for you, do one maybe, but don't get really sort of stressed out and bogged down in it. And some of them I see, I don't know if anybody follows this guy called the College Essay Guy. He's very good. There's a lot of free content. I suggest looking at him. He's a great counselor, but his brainstorming exercises, will take you a month. They're so long. So I'm sure they help students really get to know themselves, but they take really long, and most students don't have that kind of time. So anyway, back to the question of what are kind of some processes a student can do. So one thing is if we have any students on here who are younger than the 12th grade, I really, really recommend getting into the habit of writing. So the habit of writing and reflecting, and just once a day, just once a day writing a paragraph or two about what happened to you in that day, or what thoughts you had, or maybe you did some homework and you really enjoyed learning about, you know, the Vietnam War or something that you didn't know about. Just write. Writing gets better with practice. It really, really does. I mean, it's one of those things that, yes, I mean, some people have a natural flair for it, but it's like public speaking. Anyone can actually do it if they work on it. But yes, there are some people who are naturally better at it. But yes, practice is my number one piece of advice. Practicing, creating a habit of writing and reflecting, because sometimes you just never know what's going to come out of it, you know, and one day you may write a lot and one day you may write nothing. So that's fine. So that's the one exercise I suggest people do. And then the other one is just really kind of, like I said earlier, reflecting, taking, maybe not, you know, making it a full-on kind of, you know, exercise or project that you have to get into, but just keeping track of who you are. Like, what are the things that really you want other people to know about you, and staying very focused on that. Because I think as soon as we get sort of focused or defocused, and we start thinking about, you know, what is somebody else writing, and that person who got into my dream school last year, what did they say? I mean, it just becomes not about you, right? And that's one of the reasons why I don't really recommend that students look at past essays of other students, because I think it can be a little demotivating, and then you're comparing yourself to other people. I mean, it can be difficult, but it may help to read a few just to get an idea, but you need to really write this on your own. And if you know who you are and the story you want to tell about yourself, it's easier. But the other thing I think that's very, very important is that students, from whatever stage they're at right now, create a resume. And it's a really, really important exercise, because, and when I say this, I don't really mean let your parents create a resume for you, because your parents can do that easily. And it's fine. I mean, the resume that your parents create for you eventually is, you can work from, but the point is just that you need to know it yourself, right? And you need to be putting those things in your resume. Oh yeah, I did this, and then I did that, and oh yeah, that was interesting how A led to B and B led to C. And you yourself are kind of thinking, why did you do all these things? And when you can see that yourself on one piece of paper, and you know why you did, you know, 4 different activities, then you can kind of think of a story around it. But it's very difficult when you are in the middle of your life, super busy, trying to think of what you've done that's important. It just becomes really, you know, you're just kind of jumping around all over, and there's no focus. So I would say, just going back to that, practice, reflect on your, you know, who you are as a person, and then thirdly, create a resume.
Definitely. Yeah, and this question, one of the most, you know, like, a lot of people don't know how to answer this question, but like, how do you know if you're ready to submit your Common App essay? Like,
I mean, yeah, you go ahead. What's more to the question?
I mean, I was just gonna say, it's like, I mean, that requires some amount of soul searching in itself, right? Like, you know, when am I ready? Do I think the admissions officer is gonna like this or not? Like, how do you kind of decide that?
So I don't recommend anybody work on their Common App essay completely alone. I don't think that's a good idea. We all need feedback from everybody, always. And so, you know, I think writing, if you think you're done and you're ready, show it to your counselor, your school counselor, or your English teacher, or anybody that you trust in that sort of category. I think a lot of students actually show it to their principal. And also, so if you don't have access to those people, or you want an earlier read, show it to a friend, a parent. Parents and kids sometimes cannot really kind of, the meeting of the minds is a little difficult on this one. But you know, another adult that you trust, whose sort of perspective you trust. And I think, you know, if they come back to you and say, oh, it's pretty good, and, you know, here's some grammatical mistakes, and you can send it, and you know, and you feel you're ready, then you could send it. But I think what's really important when you get that feedback is make people, if someone says, oh, it's really good, what do they mean? Like, what did they like about it? What did it tell them about you? So asking for that feedback that's quite a little granular, because if they say, oh, it's great, it really shows how you're an amazing dancer. Like, well, that's not really what I wanted to convey. I was trying to convey that I'm hardworking, or that I can come back from, setbacks or whatever. So make sure that, they're getting the right message. And once you feel like, the people you've shown it to have gotten the right message out of it, then I think you're ready to submit. And I don't think that the other mistake that can really happen, I just want to say this is, you show it to an auntie or uncle and they say, here, I revised it for you. And they come back with all those flowery words and introductory sentences, and just don't do all that. Because again, the admissions officers they just want to get to know you. They don't really need all of that.
They don't.
Got it. Definitely.
So, I didn't apply to the US. So to me, this is all new knowledge, which I absolutely love. But the SOP was something very different, at least from personal experience, what I've been told, and the drafts I've written and the one that I submitted. So can you really use a part of your Common App essay in your SOP for the UK?
So I think the simple answer is no, you cannot. But the more complicated answer is that I think it depends on what your Common App essay is about, right? So if you did write a Common App essay about, let's say you're applying for a spot in the UK medicine. You have to, and your whole Common App essay is about, a volunteer opportunity you had in a hospital, and some of the, what you did, and some of the experiences you had and how you managed those. Some of that, like a very small part of that, can go into the UK SOP for a medical program, but not the kind of, oh, it made me feel this way, and I really, it made me remember my grandfather or whatever. None of that. No, like just the UK SOP is just very, very straightforward. I went to the hospital. There was a critical patient. I realized the complexity around managing such critical cases, even when it comes to, diagnostics and care. Like you concretely told me what you did and what you learned and what those specific things are. But a lot of kind of reflection and relation to other things and, all of that does not go into the UK personal statement. They're very, very different. So I guess we're going to talk more about that.
Yeah, I from personal experience, I think it's just way more straightforward.
It is. It's
right,
very.
about the course, your achievements, and as you said, the essay that US people like, I became the football captain, could be put into your SOP actually.
Yeah, I mean, as I want to study international affairs or business or leadership, and my role as the football captain has prepared me to understand what it takes. That's about what you can say. But not being the football captain really turned my life around, and I started to believe in myself. That doesn't go in a UK personal statement. And if you look at the Common App prompts, we haven't even talked about those, but there are, I think, 7 prompts, and they have different questions. Talk about something that you do that makes you lose all track of time, or talk about a time that you were challenged, or talk about a problem you've solved. Like those kinds of questions are asking you to tell a longer and a story about one more specific incident, whereas the SOP for the UK is really asking you, why do you want to study this course? What has prepared you for it? Where do you see yourself in the future? And what have you done to kind of help us understand that what this course is about? That's about it.
Yeah. All right. Before we kind of segue into the UK part of it, there are just like a few questions. Do we have the time to entertain just like 3 or 4 questions?
Yeah, I think we do.
So one of the questions was, what is your opinion on students talking about their phobias in their essays? Like fears and stuff.
Again, I think it's very interesting, and it's very case by case. So. I did have a student one year write an essay about her fear of moths, and it was, and it's one of my favorite essays. But again, it was one of my favorite essays and the favorite of a lot of other people. But then a few colleagues were like, I didn't like this essay at all. What does it tell? It's about a moth. It's about moths and fear. But the point is that it showed me I think what really worked in that essay, you know, is that there wasn't a lot of sadness in it. There wasn't a lot of actual fear. It was a story, and because it was about a moth, which most people, I mean, she's definitely afraid of them, but, you know, most people don't read about that and think, God, that's, you know, terrible and scary. It helped, it was kind of almost light, but it showed her, you know, how much it affected her, and how much she realized that you know, that she could grow from it. She grew out of it, she worked on it, she understood that, you know, but also she believed in herself, right? She understood that things that other people aren't afraid of, it's okay for her to be afraid of and to work on, and things like that. So I think phobias are tricky, but I think the main thing that you have to do when you're talking about a phobia is try not to be really sad, because no one likes to read about really sad stories, and B, though, I mean, I have read the sad essays that were very good. So, and B, try to definitely show yourself coming out of it. Don't talk about how you're just still paralyzed by it and you're never going to get out of it, and it's something that rules your life or something. You know, you have to talk about how you've come out of it.
Okay, got it. There's another question on should you be too honest when writing the essay, or like, you know, like how honest should you be?
I think it's okay to be very honest about certain things. I think I wouldn't suggest being honest about things that are very controversial. I mean, it's very hard to get people to see that in a different way. So, you know, things that we know about, you know, racism, sexism, you know, abuse, things like that. I mean, that's not something that, that I would say, if it's something you've been involved in, it's probably not the right place to be honest about it. When it comes to things like, you know, a learning disability or a family situation, I think it's okay to be honest about things like that. I mean, I've seen very, very serious, you know, family issues come up in Common App essays. And again, I think it has to be handled in the right way. We have to see how a student or an applicant has, you know, grown from it, overcome it, developed mechanisms to kind of handle it, things like that. So it's important. I just, you know, I mean, honesty obviously is good and is okay, but I think it depends on what you're talking about, really.
Got it. And I think we can take one more before we kind of move on.
Yeah, I think we could take one more and we'll answer most of them post all the slides.
Definitely.
Okay.
So if a student's applying for one course, one specific course, should that student talk about it in the essay, like, or do you just like completely not talk about, you know, like if you're trying to do one course specifically in your Common App essay?
So if you're talking about the US and the Common App, it's not really the place necessarily to talk about your major. So it depends on, yeah, I mean, it's really not the place to talk about your major. And the problem that happens sometimes is that a student, like I mentioned that I gave the example of, you know, a robotics competition, is that a student might want to write about a robotics competition and about how much they love robotics and how, you know, that's really sort of built the foundation on, you know, why they want to be an engineer. And then the next thing you know, the dream college they're applying to is asking them, why do you want to study engineering? So that's a second essay. You can't repeat the same information. So it's really, I don't advise students to write about, you know, the major or the course in the Common App essay, and to save that for a supplemental essay. I think if it's something, I'm just gonna kind of qualify that a bit. If it's something that you think really, if that thing, that robotics or the entrepreneurship program you studied or whatever, really is the thing that's going to sort of identify the characteristic that you're trying to convey in the essay, then maybe you can speak about it, but in that way only, not about then why you want to go on and study business in college.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's an important distinction to make. Definitely. I think Aryan, you can take it from here. You can say it.
So would you recommend to talk about personal experiences in your Common App essay and SOP? Could we get like a comparison and see what would it be like?
So I don't think writing, when you say personal experiences, I mean, I've seen people, you know, start even their UK personal statement with, you know, every day my father came home from work and spoke to me about his business, and, you know, that always got me interested in business. Then I took HL business, and, you know, then I did this internship, and I know I want to study business in college in the UK. So that's a personal experience, but it's not very delicate, I guess. So, I mean, it's fine to kind of begin a story that way. I think when it comes to things like, yeah, I've seen very interesting essays, students talking about, you know, their parents getting divorced, or, you know, a grandparent dying is a common one, or I think I've also seen students talk about, just for example, you know, being a part of, say, a group or a club that's working on an initiative and feeling like somebody cheated, or somebody claimed the credit for like the whole enterprise. And so those kind of things, I mean, become really touchy, because you don't want to sound bitter. I mean, you are bitter because that person did something wrong, and it's really, you know, but the Common App essay is not the kind of place to sort that out, right? So I think it depends on what the personal experience is to say whether you should speak about it. But in general, as we know, as the way the questions are posed, the Common App is about writing about a personal experience. I mean, you can't write about, I'm trying to think of a Common App that isn't a personal experience. You have to write about a personal experience. Like you can't write about an academic experience, really. It would be your personal academic experience. So yeah, you have to write about personal things in the Common App essay. The question is, how delicate do you get? Which is, I think, the question we had before as well. It just depends.
Yeah. So I've personally come across a lot of kids, you know, in 11th, 12th, they suddenly, or they take, you know, they start an initiative, or they start like an NGO, which they've, you know, put like a lot of hours into, or you start a small startup. Would you recommend talking about that in a Common App essay, or is that too direct?
It's not too direct. Again, it's something that, you know, I think it's not too direct. I mean, students do that all the time. But what I find, again, is that they're not focused on, what does this say about me? They're focused on, I want admissions officers to see this project. So you have to make sure you're telling that story for the right reason. So I've seen a lot of that recently, where the whole essay is very much, it's like how the person is basically asking me, how can I help me write my essay about the thing I think is most important that I've done, rather than the thing that I think is most important for people to know about me, right? So this is not the place to talk about all the things you've done. I mean, you can talk about it, but you need to be telling, you know, I'm just trying to think of a good example of, I think a lot of students use that kind of a story, let's say about perseverance or teaching underprivileged children, or, you know, to show things like, you know, grit, determination, compassion. So I went into this NGO school and I realized that they didn't have any even papers or pencils. And I, you know, sort of realized that I could go on a you know, sort of donation drive and get paper and pencils, but then that's really outdated anyway. So then I brought, you know, I made a whole plan for, you know, a technical initiative in the school, and then I got donations of smartphones, and then I really, you know, just kind of like, then you're kind of showing how you're thinking ahead, and what you're demonstrating in that story is not that you did a great thing. You're demonstrating how your thinking process and how you went ahead and you kind of convinced the administration that this was the right direction to take these you know, kids in, and all of that kind of stuff. So I think telling that story to highlight the right elements and aspects of your personality is fine.
So, sorry.
Yeah. So what would you say? Oh yeah, we've kind of gone through this.
No, sorry, that was an error on my part to everyone attending. I'm unable to go back because my keys are not working.
Oh.
I think the question 9 had already been answered by Dr. Kim. It was again about personal experiences and also complex words, or should we keep it simple?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned that simple is better.
Yeah, we should not try and be Shashi Tharoor here. Which is, yeah, this is a question that I had too. What would you say is better, using quotes or no quotes at all?
So what I always tell students is that, the quotes, by quotes you mean, the beginning, putting the words of Mahatma Gandhi at the beginning of your essay or something,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. So sometimes I really do think that an applicant is inspired by the thoughts and the ideas in that quote, and that's why they've put it there. And so, it sometimes is a good thing to put in when you're writing, and maybe leave it in for a while. But by the time you finish the essay, your essay should stand on its own without the quotes, I feel.
Right.
And so I am not a big fan of quotes. And I think, again, it's something that the admissions officers see and they're like, oh,
Right.
I don't really want to know what, I don't know what Malala said. I want to know what the students said, right?
Exactly.
What this is about. So I feel like if you really, really are wedded to that sort of quote, it's better to put it in at the end, to say, after all of this and after all of what I experienced and what I saw and what I thought, I think those words of so-and-so really, I can see how the words of so-and-so ring true, etc. So maybe at the end, maybe if you have to.
Yeah, okay. Quotes actually reminds me when Kevin and I used to be in ICSE, and we used to write quotes during our examination for our English language papers. And I didn't know the person's name, so I would just write, a great man / woman once said. Nobody really liked it. We just thought we'd get you more marks. So this is the end of the US segment. And so yeah, do you want to do the Q&A now, Kevin, or should we do that after the UK segment?
I think since we took a few questions, we can directly move on. We'll definitely come back to the questions.
So what does the statement of purpose mean, and how different could it be in terms of the mentality or thought process that one has to have before getting into it as compared to a Common App essay?
So I think the statement of purpose is really asking you very straightforward question. Why do you want to study this course, and why should we admit you? I mean, it's very simple. And so when answering that, why do you want to study it is, what do you already know about it? What background have you had in it? And why should you admit me is like, I've already done this much. I already understand this. So it's a very straightforward kind of document, honestly. And I think the two things about this. One is that if you go to UCAS, which is the UK application website, they have so many kind of guides and tutorials on how to write the personal statement. And it's very, very good. And they're very straightforward. From the point of view, I often just tell my kids, like, here are the questions they ask on the UCAS what do they call it? Personal statement worksheet. Right. If you answer those questions, each of them, you write a paragraph, and you just put that together. That's your personal statement. Like they really literally want you to answer those questions. It is not about, any other kind of flowery inspiration, nothing. And if you get the main sort of, I guess we'll talk about this more, but there are a lot of pitfalls you can make in the personal statement. But I think if you can stick to the basics of why this course, why me, you're pretty much good.
Right. I'm sorry, I'm unable to read it on my screen. Yeah. What are UK universities looking for when they read the SOP?
Yeah, so they're really looking for your suitability for the course. So from your sort of grades and the courses you've taken in high school, they can see, like, okay, you want to study economics, did you take HL math, or did you take math at some higher level, some other curriculum? So that's fine, that they can see that you are qualified for the course. But this is really, I may say I want to study economics. And the other thing to remember is that in the UK, every course it's a 3-year course, and you only study that subject. You only study economics, and you cannot change your major. So in the US, they're not so concerned about this, because in the US, you can change your major. It's a 4-year course. You can go from engineering to history. It doesn't matter. Right. But in the UK, you are signing up to study economics for 3 years. So you better know what economics is. So that is what they're looking for. They're saying, I know the students take an HL math, so they can handle the math component of economics, but do they know what economics is? And if you write an entire personal statement about studying economics and really you're talking about business, you will not be admitted. If you cannot distinguish between business and economics, you will not be admitted. So you have to be very clear that you understand the course. And this doesn't mean you have to already know the course. You just have to know by the end, what you should be able to know and do. So, I mean, it isn't necessarily the case that you have to have already done so much of economics. You just have to, and like I said, like many students have never studied economics when they go to study it in college in the UK. You don't have to have studied it. It's not a entry requirement. No, it's not. So if you have read a few articles, if you've been inspired by some events, if you've taken part in some activities, like let's say MUN, and you want to talk about the role of economics, and you can talk about all of that. And that will signal that you know what it will mean and what the sort of elements of an economics course involve, and that you're interested in it. So that's very important. I think it's not, and this is very common. I'm giving the economics example, but actually it's also very common with psychology. Like most students haven't taken psychology when they go to study it in college. So they don't want to admit you if you don't understand it, because you might not like psychology. So you have to demonstrate that you know enough to sort of justify that you're going to like it. And again, if you've done any work related to it, like you've shadowed a psychologist and helped her write reports, or you've in economics, you've worked with a think tank, or maybe you've just had a conversation with a family friend who runs a think tank. You don't have to have done it. I mean, anything that you can say that demonstrates you have exposed yourself to the idea and you have an interest. And maybe then after you spoke to that person who runs a think tank, you read three economics books and you really liked the ideas around, X, Y, and Z. Or, that's all. You have to just show that you're kind of prepared to study that further. And when it comes, and even this is also true of things like engineering. Like most people haven't studied engineering before they go to do engineering. So they're really just looking for your suitability for the course. And that goes, from the point of view of academic preparation, outside knowledge, and also some extracurricular activities that might have prepared you for it, like I said, MUN, or an internship or things like that. So I hope that is clear.
MUN rings a bell, because that's most part of my SOP, because I was applying for management and eco, and luckily I got to preside over ECOFIN, which is the Economics and Financial Committee. So I wrote so much about it. Hopefully they didn't get bored of it.
But see, that probably worked out perfectly. I mean, I think the real problem is but the other thing, Aryan, that's very important about that, and maybe I'm jumping ahead on the SOP thing, is that a lot of students will again say, I'm really interested in studying this, and I've done, I was on this, this MUN committee, and therefore and so that's why I want to study economics. But that hasn't told me you've understood it, right? You then have to say, and it made me realize the complexity of international development, or the complexity of, social, or, I don't know, whatever it is. You have to kind of take things a step further, because I see that a lot in personal statements. The people think they literally have to just list what they've done. It's like, no, then you have to interpret it. And then from that, I learned the following, and now I want to answer the questions that take me ahead in college, right? I mean, there has to be kind of a progress happening.
Right. Find something that could interest you within that subject. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. I think that's why they call it like a statement of purpose. It has to like show your whole purpose and the whole, and your passion towards what you're doing, and not just list facts. Definitely.
Yeah. So, okay. Sorry, I'll let you ask this question before I answer it.
No, you can go ahead.
No, you can go ahead. No worries.
No, what kind of research should I have done? But I was just saying that, research can range from things like, doing a 3-month internship in with an organization to literally, you know, speaking to someone about the topic who works in the field. So anything counts when it comes to the SOP. And I think that's something that students get very stressed out about. They're like, but I haven't done an internship and, you know, I want to study business and I've never, you know, worked in a bank. It's like, yeah, that's okay. You don't have to do that. So anything, and even, and especially when it comes to things like, I mean, again, let's say biochemistry, right? Most students in high school have taken biology and they've taken chemistry. So they don't really know what it takes to what is involved in studying biochemistry. So some external reading is really important. And also look at the course, not, I mean, because the UCAS, you apply to 5 colleges on one application, you cannot say, oh, I want to, you know, the biochemistry course at Bristol will expose me to the following and that's why I want to study. You can't say that because you're applying to 5 different colleges. But it won't hurt you to read up on what is the course content at, you know, Bristol and Manchester and 3 other places that you're applying. That's fine. And then you don't have to mention it, but you know, they know that is a big component of biochemistry. You understand it and you're interested in it and they're going to teach it to you, right? So that kind of researching the course on the course website is also very important. Because if you're really off base and you're like, oh, you know, through my bio and chemistry HL in the IB, I know I really want to study X, and X is not actually what you study in biochemistry, then that's a red flag.
Right. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, this one's just a bit technical. If you could just go over, you know,
like what could the structure be for an SOP?
Yeah.
So the structure, the SOP has to be, I think, 4,000 characters, and there's a certain number of lines. I don't remember. Is that what you're asking me? So 4,000 characters is about a page, an A4 one-side page. And a certain number of lines, which I'm forgetting the exact number right now, I'm sorry, but it's like you cannot exceed the number of lines, even if you're under the word count. So just be careful with those technical requirements. A lot of people try to, I think if you return a space in your SOP, that counts as a line. So, you know, people, like, sometimes SOPs are formatted such that there's really no separation between paragraphs. Yeah. So, but those technical specifications are quite rigid, and even rigid for the recommender as well. It's not just the student.
Got it. And this is in contrast to the Common App essay, which I think is 500 words. The
650 words. 650 words. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Definitely.
Wow. So clearly, from what we've discussed, SOP and the Common App essay are poles apart in ways. But what would you say is something that could be common between them, and what would you say are the key differences?
So what's common between them, I think, is that what's common? Sorry. I think what's common is that, both of them will require you to, the process is common. You have to sort of write, revise, get it reviewed by other people. And that's common between both, starting it ahead, spending time drafting and taking feedback is a commonality in these two, in the process. When it comes to the content, I think they're very different, honestly. I mean, because unless your Common App essay is about, let's take again the sort of economics example, is about, your Common App essay is about an NGO experience that has made you want to work in developmental economics. So that might be your whole Common App essay, and that will be something that you have to mention in the SOP, but you have to mention a lot of other things in the SOP as well, like your academic preparation and reading and other external things. So there's some overlap, but I think they're very different. When it comes to the Common App essay, like I said, you're really looking at telling who you are as a person. The SOP is really who, what you want to study and why you should be admitted. It's a very different, and how you're prepared for that. So it's a very different kind of document.
Got it. I think why this comes up, again and again is because, like, a lot of students are trying to, like, have the be all end all solution to college essays. And I think it would be safe to say here that it's not a good idea. Like these are very different applications.
Yeah, you cannot use them. You can't interchange them at all. You won't succeed. Really, yeah. And like I said, I think if you the way you would, if you had to do it, the best way to do it is use your UK personal statement as a Common App essay, but it would be not a great Common App essay. But you could do it. And then you're going to run into another essay that asks you why you want to study whatever major you've picked, and you've really actually already written about that in the Common App essay. So I don't recommend it at all. One thing I was going to say was that, I forgot. Go ahead. I forgot what else I was going to say.
No problem.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I was going to say. If you are writing both, I would suggest writing the personal statement first. It's easier, and it gets it's kind of like the resume. It gets a lot of things out, and then you realize actually what you have to work with.
Got it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. Sorry, is my chat screen covering the question?
No.
No, yeah. No.
Okay, sorry, it's on my end. So Kevin, could you just carry on the question?
Yeah, definitely. So this has come up in the comment section as well. Is including personal experiences in the SOP a good idea? Like you've spoken about it, but just a quick.
I think when you say personal experiences, you mean things like extracurricular activities or a death of a family member. What do you mean by personal experiences?
I'd say, yeah, as you said, death of a family member, maybe personal experiences, getting into the team and all that kind of stuff. The wide range that you said shouldn't be used directly for a Common App.
Yeah, no, I mean, an SOP doesn't really require any of that. And the thing is, I feel like students, they can't give it up. They just, because students spend a lot of time on that stuff and they really don't want to give it up in their SOP. But if you have to, I think if you have to err on the side of, cutting words, I think you probably need to cut out some of the sort of, or combine some of, say, the activities. Having been, active in multiple sports in my school, XYZ, not like playing football taught me this and playing volleyball taught me that and playing chess taught me this. Like you cannot spend that much time. It's just, and colleges, I think, sorry, let me just say this quickly, but UK colleges do have clubs and activities, and they do want to know if you're going to be a part of those things. So if there's something that I want to be in the choir, or I want to be a part of something, a club that exists, you should mention that in your personal statement, because admission, the UK admissions officers they do want to know what you're going to be like on campus a little bit, but they mostly want to know are you going to be suited to the course.
So I think, we've finished everything, and this is just some more information. So as I said, the Red Pen has one of the biggest counseling companies in Mumbai, and in fact in India. So if you want more information about how to crack that Common App essay, or editing of your essays, or counseling itself, this is where you can contact the Red Pen. It's www.theredpen.in, and you could email them there too. Some more information about us. We're UnivConnect. We're an organization. We have 80 plus advisors in 12 countries. Starting in 12 different countries. We have 70 plus universities all around the world. And it's for the students, by the students, of the students. And what we do is connecting students globally. So if you want the student perspective about life at university, you can just go on to www.univconnect.in or follow us on Instagram. And you'll get to know more about us and, of course, the Red Pen itself at TRP on Instagram. So I think that's it for today. Thank you to all the attendees who joined. Thank you, Dr. Kimberly, for joining. And I think we've had a great time. Hope everyone's
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. It was really a pleasure to talk with you guys, and I hope I was able to answer most of the questions.
Yeah, I think for sure.
And if there are any more questions, as we provided our contact information, we could connect you to the Red Pen as well.
Yes.
And definitely we can take it from there.
Yeah. And we're going to be sending in a feedback form right after this webinar ends. We request all of you all to fill up the feedback form, or if somebody has not attended this, we'd still recommend that you'll go through the feedback form, because then Red Pen can get in touch with you with future events that they might have with professionals or deans of admissions of universities or even UnivConnect itself. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Hope everyone's safe at home. Yeah, I think we're done.
Thank you.